Trauma Therapist Podcast Plus listeners can listen to episodes early and ad-free right now. Become a Plus listener by going to Apple Podcasts, searching for the Trauma Therapist Podcast, and signing up today. Welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast, a show about the incredible people dedicated to helping those who have experienced trauma. My name is Guy McPherson, and my mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to inspire each of us to help those around us. All right, Zelina, here we go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have as my guest today, Zelina Chinwoh. Zelina, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So excited to be here, Guy. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. So Zelina is a licensed clinical psychotherapist, published author, and U.S. Army veteran, renowned for extensive expertise in human behavioral and social work practices. Passionate about inspiring others to be bold and powerful, she's dedicated to helping individuals manage life's challenges while fostering personal growth and resilience. As the owner of the Healing Experience Counseling and Consulting Services, and also the podcast host of Dear Unapologetically Me, Zelina is deeply committed to empowering individuals to embrace their authentic selves and life purposes. Hell yeah. Zelina, welcome. Love it.
Thank you, Guy. That was a beautiful introduction. I love it. Thank you.
So look, before we get going, share with the listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
I am originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, down here in the South. I'm born and raised. And currently I'm between Baton Rouge, Louisiana and Atlanta, Georgia, as where I practice in terms of my business as a psychotherapist.
All right. So look, I'm just going to ask you straight up, how did you get into this field? How did things happen for you?
Yes. Believe it or not, Guy, I can say that you would probably say I was birthed into this field. My mother was a therapist as well. She's no longer with us here on this side of the realm, but growing up and having a mother as a licensed therapist, you knew about assessments before you probably knew your name, okay? And, just going along with the whole aspect of a helping professional, she was the epitome of what her just being a practitioner. And that's pretty much what started it. Having her own private practice, her specialty was mainly more so for addiction. So that's what she loved to do. And she always would say, I think you'd be a great social worker. I think you'd be a great social worker. You know how parents do that. So as I got older and I started to understand, I've always been the curious kid, always been a why girl, I would say. Like, well, why is this? Why is that? It would drive my mom crazy. She's like, here you go, asking me all these questions, please. Just a curious mind. So here I am now in the field. I know she's like, you're the return on investment, right? But in terms of different perspective, in terms of specialty. And that's pretty much how I started out in this whole field of mental health.
So you are a MSW and an LCSW.
Mm-hmm.
Why social work? What about that particular designation got you?
One of the things about social work is it's so multifaceted, in terms of the services that we can provide. And from myself, I like micro. I like individuality, the individual private practice, but I am a advocate for macro practice, being able to make a difference in terms of policies and the overall spectrum. Well, we know we have to have both, the micro, meso, and the macro. But when I was going to school, I was like, it got to be more than these four walls. What are these policies? And it was my teacher, my professor at Southern University, Dr. Richardson. She was the one that taught research. And she said, the world is bigger than the four walls that you're going to be in serving clients. And that's where the fascination came, Guy. Like, you know what? I think we really can change the world. One policy at a time, one person at a time, until I got into the field and was like, oh, wow, this is a lot.
That's really interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. It's just interesting to find out what was the thought process that made you turn that way. I wasn't thinking like that when I went into school. So you, from this very early age, sounds like your mom was incredible.
Mhm.
She shared, whether intentionally or not, her heart, her work. You go to school, you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to become a therapist. What happens when you get out? What do you start doing? Or even let's not even start there. When you start seeing clients early on in your practica and so forth, what was that like for you?
Um,
You
I
started.
can pretty much go back to the question and answer this question as well. One of the things that really just influence is the fact that I myself is a product of certain environments in terms of statistical measures and being of a marginalized community, African American, and my mother was a single parent. Even though she was an educated professional, she did have the struggles of a single parent, mainly common, and the family dynamics. So growing up for me, it was always trying to understand, in terms of, well, if this is what the family is, then why mom is working so hard, and then I just kind of really got a understanding of what the TV and social media, because my show was the Cosby Show and all those different shows versus what reality was. So
Mm,
just imagine being a kid and you're trying to decipher life, and here you are in this young age, and you may be watching on TV how life is supposed to be versus what you're experiencing, in terms of the robbing Peter to pay Paul, the struggles of an African American, single mother, as well as her being educated, and just understanding that life is going to happen. So it really made me more inquisitive to know about different things, social structures, family dynamics, trauma, how does it impact the individual? And it does,
right.
when we look at all of these aspects, that Dr. Guy being a psychologist yourself. And even though you have all of these other aspects that are going great in your life, sometimes there's a missing piece and it does influence your life. So going through life and bearing my mom at a young age at 21, I'm supposed to be having the time of my life. And now I'm dealing with a great life transition. And I had just come home from, I think it was basic training at the time. And then life happened. And then on that, being the oldest of two sisters. So it's like it shifted again. And that really sparked the curiosity of family dynamics, statistic wise, how it impacts people, and what can they do to, I guess, level up or be a better person
Mm,
without the influence of their environment. And
wow.
that pie, you would say, that person and environment, psychological perspective. So, yes.
Just one a point. So I do have a PhD in clinical psychology, but I'm not a psychologist per se. I just want to clarify that. So okay, you talked about the Cosby Show, kind of what you're seeing versus reality. Talk about that dichotomy. What was the reality for you?
The reality for me was my mother was the matriarch of our family, and one thing that she would always say is that, put your best foot forward, make sure that you're educated, make sure that you go above and beyond. But in some aspects, I remember her always saying that I just don't know all the answers. As smart as I am in terms of theory and theoretical practices, it's certain aspects of maintaining a relationship, and
Mm,
that comes into the fact of you just can't make people do what they don't want to do. And I can really say that shaped our trajectory because it was survival mode living, survival mindset, making sure that we got from point A to point B and looking apart and making sure that regardless of what it was, that we were there however we got there in terms of that, but we put our best foot forward. And sometimes that was a lot, especially being at a young age and you're trying to figure out life in your own mind. And then you're having the stressors of the dynamics of a broken home environment. And that, I think that's in itself is another pressure, especially for someone that's so young. So the survival mode mindset could be emotional, it could be mentally, could be physically. And I see that a lot within my own community, how it really impacts who you are and your identity. And for me, I saw that. And also, my mother lived it. We lived it. And it also showed me that even though you went through those things, you don't have to stay there. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my whole journey point in getting to be in private practice, is to really help people say, listen, I lived this, and that you can find balance and you don't have to stay in this situation mentally and emotionally.
Zelina, I got to say, you're pretty incredible. We're doing a video here for those who are just listening, but you have an amazing presence and you have an amazing, incredible voice. Literally, your voice is really incredible too. And as you're talking, I'm thinking back to the bio I read, which was the take home I got was self-empowerment, resilient. So at what point, I mean, I can hear it in what you've just said, but professionally, how did that become a through line for you, a fiber of inspiration for you?
Quite frankly, when I was doing my internships and going through school and earning my degrees, I would always pick the internships that really everybody was terrified. Like, send me to the psychiatric.
Like what?
Send me. I'm ready. Okay. Oh, it's a full moon tonight. I'm ready.
Wow, very cool. Why? Why was that?
My mother. It was just her. We were raised, in different environments in terms of the work that she did. And she exposed us to community service and volunteering. It was always like, listen, take risks. It's okay. We're all learning here.
Wow.
And to me, it was like every aspect is learning. So the working in behavioral health was my favorite. It was just amazing. But I remember doing a lot of the assessments and just actually doing the biopsychosocial assessment with the client. And I would hear so many different traumas that would occur in childhood. And I would always become fascinated with the thought of, well, what if that didn't happen? Or what if it was different? Would this person actually be in this state of mind or in this state of being? And that's just that inquisitive mind with me, the why girl, always trying to figure out why. And it really provoked the thought process of learning about the theories and how, Sigmund Freud and the Eriksons, all of the stages of development and how it really impacts who you are as an adult. And I became, I guess, infatuated with wanting to know, how can I make a difference? Mm-hmm. Because again, by the time we're an adult, it's already ingrained. And now it's that rewiring, reprogramming, and that can be hard. So with me, I would see my clients or in those settings and I would read the biopsychosocials, or I would talk to them in one-on-one sessions, individual sessions, and it would always sometimes go back. It would go back to childhood. Mm-hmm. And you would hear these things and your mind, your wheels are turning. You're like, oh, now it's making sense. Now it's kind of piecing, just being in the field. You're like, okay, A plus B equals C, and now it's like the fascination. So what can we do? And that's what started it, Guy. It was, let's look at psychodynamic. Let's look at self-empowerment, because majority of my clients, for the most part, have experienced some shape of, I would identify, traumatic experience, even right. Adverse childhood experiences, and that it has impacted who they are today.
You, I mentioned in the bio, you have a podcast, Dear Unapologetically Me. Talk a little bit about that. When did that start? What is it? What do you focus on in it?
The Dear Unapologetically Me podcast, that was honestly a personal step toward transition for myself. And it was walking in this new unbecoming to becoming. I love public speaking, but in social society, they don't teach you how to brand yourself in school. When you're getting these degrees, the social media, listen, I still feel that I'm behind, but I was terrified. I was petrified. It was just like, who's going to listen to me? Who's going to who wants to hear me ramble about what?
Right.
And my family already knows I'm a talker. They're like, you know what? Yeah, I think it's a bright idea, but not really. And believe it or not, I did have some individuals around me said, don't go and do that. That you shouldn't do that. That no one's gonna listen. And it was in that where it was okay. What side am I going to choose today?
Mm.
And that's where that dear unapologetically me walking in my purpose, unapologetically saying it, standing in my stance. And I decided to take the journey, take the leap. Was I terrified every time I got on the camera? Oh yeah, I'm terrified now, but it has gotten fear, right? Because we know that's a subconscious analogy. So you got to really give this whole therapy thing. Got to really work it on yourself sometime. You're right.
Right.
And I really had to really social work myself. Like, no, I won't allow others to present their insecurities onto me due to the fact that that may not be something that they're interested in, or may be something that they have a fear on. And it was just unapologetically, no, I'm not. I'm standing in my purpose, and I have something to say. And
excuse me, do you do interviews on it or
I
not?
have done a few interviews on the actual podcast itself. I'm trying my best to get with so much going on, God, with private practice, getting an assistant. That's my main focus, is to get more, you would say, get a schedule, because it's something that I love to do, and I think that it embraces and teaches so many people. So just conversation, but that's the goal, is to bring on guests, to bring on professionals and people who have the expertise, and just people who have stories, just to be able to say, hey, we're all human.
Yeah.
We're going through, and it's okay.
What do you, talking about purpose, what do you feel your purpose is in the work you do?
I do feel that my purpose in the work that I do is to help people become their greatest self, the person that they've always desired, like the person you've dreamed of becoming. We've all had those thoughts. We've all had those childhood dreams, in class, teacher, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be? Getting that person back to that jittery feeling, because life comes with its own stressors, it's external factors. And if I can do that, I think that I'm really fulfilling my purpose and my mission in being in the field of mental health.
That's an incredible mission. And it's so crazy that you said that, because I literally just got off Zoom with my own therapist. And I'm talking about that too. Even at my age, I'm like frustrated because I'm not here or there or doing this or that. How, Zelina, how do you do that? And I know it's different with every client, but what are some of the ways you do that with the people you work with?
Some of the ways we do it literally is, for me, is to go back to the old theoretical principles. They've been tried and true. They've been clinically based. As a therapist, we use evidence-based practices, and that's the beauty of it, because it's already been clinically researched. And one of my favorite is, especially for inner child unpacking or just reprogramming the whole aspect of reliving, you would say, or re-identifying, it's the empty chair. Just thought theory. It's just amazing, or the whole scripting, or let's look at the magic pill. Let's talk about this. And another one is to really hold space. I have the power to hold space for someone else, and I think that's amazing. Mm-hmm. For me to be able to hold space for people who are trying to find their way. Sometimes the work can take more than a couple sessions. Right. Sometimes the work can take more than a couple years. But if I can hold the space for you to literally unpack, to literally unmask, that that in itself is profound. And as a therapist, sometimes I hold that space so we can build a rapport with each other, so they can trust me. Because again, most of the time you just rigmarole every day. Like I told someone the other day, do you know how far a conversation or the impact you would make in someone's life if you just asked them, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when was the last time someone, are you okay? Or in a gentle way. How are
Right.
you today? You know,
Right.
and just workplaces. When I do seminars for work environments, like it's okay to ask your staff before we get into the rigmarole of day, because I don't know what they're going through, but they showed up for us today.
Mm-hmm.
So just holding space, giving space, and allowing that person to really rebirth themselves, because that's what I look at it as. It's like a transformation, and they think that it's us, but all actuality, we're just in the passenger seat.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing the work. We're just here
Mm-hmm.
guiding along. And then when we reach these milestones, and I can sit back and we can go back and reflect and say, remember that time you came in here, or remember that day. I think I'm more excited for them in their moment sometimes than they are, because you see the change. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
that caterpillar, rebirth. I saw you at that moment when you came, but now look at you. Look how great you're looking. So that's what I live for.
Why is that challenging? So challenging for many of us that maybe we don't see it, we don't trust ourselves.
Uh,
Why do we, many of us, end up sometimes so far away from who we
yeah.
really are or want to be?
I think, Guy, one of the biggest issues is, and I like not issues or impacts, is the process of thinking and the distorted beliefs and the pattern beliefs. And that's why I always go back and I always say, I always reflect on theory when we say person and environment, when we say that attachment theories and social learning theories, all of these aspects play into who you are today, the foundation. Where did this start? You didn't just pop on earth and say, well, I don't really believe in myself today.
Right.
No one really comes into this whole world thinking that way. You come in with almost like a clean slate. But what happens is, over a period of time, especially when you're in an environment and the caregivers may have not done their work, or they may be unaware of their own distorted beliefs and their patterns and behaviors. And what happens is, children are sponges. They are taking in, they are learning. And by the time you're an adult, it's already embedded in your cognitive mindset that, well, I kind of believe in myself, but I really don't. And I always tell my clients,
Right.
where did that start from? Let's talk,
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make
Wow.
sense?
Oh, it makes total sense, and it makes too much sense to me. I'm like, Jesus. All right, look. At what point, I want to go back just a little bit. At what point did you enroll and be as into the army? Excuse me.
I went into the service in 2009. I went into the service in 2009. So right in the middle ending of Iraqi freedom, starting into that, because I remember getting a pen, a special pen, and starting, and I'm pretty much the only one other than my sister. She's in the Navy. She followed kind of right behind me, that went to the service. And I was like, why are we getting this pen? They were like, do you know what's going on out in the world? I'm like, not really. We're at work. I'm like, oh God. So I tell this story all the time. It was really shell shock for me
Mhm.
to go without anyone in my family that I know of serving. So yes, I went in 2009.
How did that impact you? Just that whole experience I
Ooh.
mean, being in the service.
It it has its both positive, and it has its moments as well as pros and cons. One thing about the service, it does teach you to be adaptable, to adapt in your surroundings, to be able to be more vigilant. But one thing that it does do, it minimizes the fact that you're human sometimes.
Mm.
And when you do have an issue, when you do have a day where I'm just not feeling it, that doesn't exist. And I
Right.
saw, matter of fact, you're ridiculed for saying that
Yeah.
I'm having a bad day today.
No. Nope.
You know, you know,
Yeah.
you say the wrong thing. My God, you may be smoked or, public humiliation. And it's really, I'm having a bad day that you're not allowed to express.
Yeah.
And here you go again in your psychic mind, in your psychological mind being reprogrammed to say, I need to suppress. This is a war zone. I'd rather be carried by, a 12. No, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. This is a serious moment. It's no time to talk about your feelings. In the long run, you will learn to continue to suppress. And when you transition, even throughout, you will find coping skills. They may not be the best coping skills. So when I went in, it did shape my mindset of preparing me for being able to withstand anything, that mental stability. Like, oh man, cry a little bit. I'm going to cry. I'm going to have a
Yeah.
moment, but I want to get back up. I'm going to keep going, that resiliency. But then it also turns off the mental, emotional, that disconnect, that whole light switch.
Yeah.
And that can really impact families. The person can impact, at that time, myself. I was suppressing a lot. I'm coming back home and dealing with the grief of my mother. So yes, I can say that, it does impact.
Appreciate that. So as we kind of wind down here, I want to ask you about, in our culture today, there's a lot of talk about mental health. Trauma certainly registers more so on people's, on the zeitgeist out there. What do you see in terms of the people you work with, your clients as a whole? What are you encountering, if anything, more so on a day-to-day basis?
More so on a day-to-day basis is them, the client, still holding on to past patterns and beliefs that is keeping them stuck and stagnated.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say this to my clients. I said, the first step is to change the environment. We know, okay, this person's not meaning me well. This environment may not be conducive to my mental health. But the real work comes in. The second step is going back and really sitting with self and going back and peeling back those layers. Because again, we just didn't get here overnight. And that part, that stuck part, they're really good at the first part sometimes. When they get good at that part, that's like that adrenaline. But then they find it confusing because they find themselves still going back to those old patterns and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them that's the part of the trauma, because sometimes it's embedded, it's there. And that's the part where they're struggling the most. And you would say when people say trauma, God, they're like, oh God, it's not that kind of trauma. Mm-hmm. Well, trauma could be anything that impacts your capability to be great, impacts your mental health, impacts your psychological, your emotional. It could be abandonment. It could be abuse. It could be neglect. It could be whatever it is that is making you feel invalidated.
There you go.
And that's what I like to tell my clients all the time. This is your story. We're going to rewrite this. We don't have to stay here. And that's what people need. The permission to own their own life, but without the permission. Like I always say, this is not Mother May I. Remember that game, Mother May I? No, tell me you want your life back, and we will give you your life back. Yes. And that's that process. And that's the process, guys. That is the process. I love and that's what requires the most work.
I love it. All right. Oh, Zelina, awesome. How do people get in touch with you?
Well, I do have a website. It's www.healingexperiencenow. That's where all of my links are. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram at Healing Experience Now. And I think also on TikTok as well as YouTube. So you can go to my website. I have all the links there.
Okay. We'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Zelina, come on. You're amazing. Seriously. Geez. Loved meeting you and having you here. Love to have you back.
Yes.
We'll talk about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Guy.
All right. Bye-bye.